I'm Jake.
Alex.
And today we're going to be reacting to the top 15 Star Trek episodes video by Linkara, aka of Atop the Fourth Wall. And you're a reasonably big Star Trek fan, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, reasonably big. I mean, I haven't watched everything inside of the Star Trek universe. There are some of the TV series that I haven't watched, some of the newer ones. But my love of the original series movies, as well as Next Generation. I mean, I grew up watching the Next Generation episodes and the movies there. And I even really loved Deep Space Nine when I was in high school. I think I watched every episode for several years of that show. And I think that's one of the most underrated shows in the entire canon.
Something you have in common with Linkara. It's actually his favorite of the Star Treks.
Really? Okay.
And I grew up watching a lot of The Next Generation. I have seen all the movies. I've seen a little bit of the original show, not a lot. My mom is a huge fan of Voyager and Enterprise, so I got my fair share of those growing up. And I've seen a bit of Deep Space Nine, so I wouldn't say we're not Trekkies, but we're more like the average fans. Mm-hmm. And I think this will be a fun video to watch.
Most recently, very excited. Many of you may know that I have two 4-year-olds, and also got them watching Wrath of Khan recently, so they can quote lines at this point at 4 years old. Very proud of that.
Cool.
So,
and without further ado, let's watch.
I think it's pretty well established by now that I'm a Star Trek fan. I've read novels, behind-the-scenes information, I've been part of Star Trek RPGs and Star Trek Online, I've got Star Trek nitpicking books, games, and of course I've watched every episode of almost every series. The only thing I haven't seen is the animated series, which every time I try to watch, I give up after about 5 minutes. Not to say they're bad, some of them are really bad, but they just can't seem to hold my interest. And of course, everybody has their favorites. I could try to go through every series and list off my favorites in each one, but I feel that would be way more time.
This also came out on the 50th anniversary.
So I should be celebrating the entire franchise. As such, these are my top 15 personal favorite episodes of Star Trek from all the television series. There are still a hell of a lot more good episodes in all of them, but these are the 15 that I love above others. Number 15, Spectre of the Gun from the original series. This is admittedly an odd one to have on here and probably won't be among most people's lists of top episodes, but I like it. The Enterprise is venturing out into an uncharted area of space and have been ordered to establish diplomatic relations with aliens in the region. However, the aliens keep telling them to leave, that they aren't interested in contact with them. Kirk, however, presses on in spite of the warning. Pissed off that the warning was ignored, the aliens construct a scenario to punish them for their intrusion. Plucked from Kirk's mind. The scenario chosen is the historical gunfight between the Clantons and the Earps at the OK Corral back in the Old West. However, the illusion isn't complete and changed. Chekhov, who has assumed the role of Billy Claiborne, is shot dead before the fight, despite the fact that Billy Claiborne survived the gunfight in history. In addition, buildings lack walls and objects seem to hang in the air purposeless. It gives everything a very surreal atmosphere, like it's a dream, and it honestly works in this. However, the reason I like this episode so much is all about the writing. The thing that pisses me off so often in fiction is when characters act completely stupid, avoiding the obvious and easy solutions out of a situation. Here, though, they think of everything that anyone else would think of. Why don't they just leave town? They try, it doesn't work. Why don't they try to make friends with the Earps? They try, it doesn't work. Okay, try organizing the townspeople against them. They seem to dislike the Earps. They try, it doesn't work. Okay. We're from the future. We've got scientific know-how and Starfleet training on our side. Let's create something that they never use in the time period. Like a gas grenade that can knock them all unconscious. They try. It doesn't work. Every normal solution that anyone else would think of is attempted and it's stopped. It seems like the only way out is the actual fight. Okay then, let's fight them.
You're experts if you got the fighting middle of a chance.
I won't spoil how it ends for you, but it's great. Number 14, Where Silence Has Lease from the Next Generation. The first 2 seasons of the Next Generation are uneven at best. A lot of the stories are stupid, the acting ridiculous, and the writing just damn moronic. However, there are a few episodes from these early days that honestly are really good, and in my opinion, this is one of them. The Enterprise D encounters a strange void in space. It has an absence of matter, energy, or anything else they could possibly investigate. The anomaly envelops them, and they keep encountering oddities in their trapped state. It's almost like a horror movie. Nothing seems to make any sense, and the utter confusion of it is terrifying.
What's going on? Ship has one bridge. One bridge.
I remember this scene. Pretty unsettling.
One riser. One bridge.
What makes this one a favorite is the atmosphere. It's creepy and haunting, and the eventual explanation for it doesn't let up the tension for a second. It's great science fiction, and if you let yourself get lost in the mood, it's pretty decent horror too. Number 13, United from Star Trek Enterprise. You'll notice that there aren't a lot of Voyager or Enterprise episodes on this list. That's because I honestly dislike those two series more than the others, with Deep Space Nine being my favorite. Enterprise struggled a lot in its early days, not only because of fatigue from Star Trek Voyager, but laughably insulting and morally offensive episodes where we're supposed to root for a bunch of morons who then preach to us about how they're so much better than everybody else. It got tiring pretty quickly, despite a few decent episodes. But by the third season, they decided to try something different, doing a season-long arc that reinvigorated interest in the show and actually started to do some good. Season 4 was sadly the final season, despite improved ratings, but it tends to have a lot more good episodes in it than others, and this is one of them. Many consider the episode Terra Prime to be the true finale of the series, mostly because the real final episode was a kick in the crotch. But personally, I say that honor should go to United. It's the second part of a trilogy of episodes, with the third part being pretty weak compared to the other two. A lot of different species are starting to get closer and closer to war as they keep claiming their ships are under attack by the others. In reality, it's the Romulans, worried about the possibility of an alliance between these other races, using a special ship to attack all of them and to make them go to war with each other. Enterprise is brought in to mediate the different conflicts, and when they realize what's going on, they put together a convoy of ships from the different races to try to fight off the Romulan vessel. At the end, a representative of the Andorians and one from the Tellarites shake hands, and a shot pulls back to reveal an armada of vessels, laying the groundwork for the United Federation of Planets. I love it. For one thing, this actually felt like a prequel to all the other series, with humans bringing together everyone in the spirit of peace and cooperation, while the early seasons were about humans dicking about in space, getting into fights, or having the captain be kidnapped or taken hostage in half the episodes. Seriously. United, however, shows what the series should have been about, laying down the foundation upon which every other show would boldly go where no one has gone before.
This operation is important, considering that it might
Fair point, even it's a prequel.
Number 12, Mirror Mirror from the original series. Even if you've never seen this episode, chances are you know the idea, or at least have seen a spoof of it. Hell, you've at least seen my spoof of it in the top fourth wall. A transporter accident sends Kirk, Scotty, McCoy, and Uhura to a
I
parallel
love the
universe where
outfits.
good is evil, and the Federation is instead an empire run on brutality and conquest. They have to race against time to get back to their own universe, while also preventing the destruction of a race of innocent people. In the end, the Mirror Spock helps send them back, wanting to get back his own people. Kirk, however, has parting words for him, speaking of the inevitable collapse of their society.
I submit to you that your empire is illogical because it cannot endure. I submit you are illogical to be a willing partner. In every revolution, there's one man with a vision.
It's a well-written, awesome speech and one of the best moments of Star Trek in my opinion. Admittedly though, in Deep Space Nine, characters go back to the alternate universe and discover that Spock's reforms ended up dooming all of humanity because the Empire was left unprepared for an attack by another aggressive power, but hey, Kirk couldn't have seen that at the time. It's still an awesome episode and things still end up working out for humanity. Number 11, In a Mirror Darkly from Star Trek Enterprise. Because the Mirror Universe first got visited in the original series, there's really no way to do a crossover with the Mirror Universe in a prequel series like Enterprise. So what did they do? They decided to set a two-parter in Season 4 within the Mirror Universe, as if you were watching the Mirror Universe version of Star Trek. It's a hell of a lot of fun, with the theme song changing to reflect war and conquest instead of exploration. The crew of the Enterprise acting like thugs and trying to backstab one another. The twists and turns are great. Now, what elevates this even more is that this is also a sequel to another original series episode called The Tholian Web. In that episode, a Starfleet vessel called the Defiant was being pulled into a rift in space and time. This episode offers an explanation explanation of where it ended up, the mirror universe of the past. The mirror crew take control of it, and in glorious high definition, we get to see a Constitution-class starship in action, with modern effects and the original series-style sets and sounds. It's just a lot of fun that pays tribute to the series in great fashion, like Season 4 of Enterprise at its best.
What are you wearing?
I found it in Captain's wardrobe.
You have some strange ideas about uniforms.
Also, on a sillier note, Enterprise had this problem where, like the original series, it tried to focus on 3 characters while the rest of the main cast kind of got the shaft when it came to episodes about them. In A Mirror Darkly, it can kind of be seen as revenge of the other main characters. Number 10, the Doomsday Machine from the original series.
Bombs. You ever hear of a Doomsday Machine? It's a weapon built primarily as a bluff. It's never meant to be used. So strong it could destroy both sides in war.
An entire solar system has been destroyed, save for its sun, and another starship called the Constellation is found nearby in a wreck. Its commanding officer, Commodore Decker, explains how his crew was killed because of his error when a giant engine of destruction came and annihilated everything in its path.
They say there's no devil, Jim. But there is. Right out of hell, I saw it.
It's hard to say why I like this one above other original series episodes, but I really do. Maybe it's the acting, with a great performance by William Wyndham as Commodore Decker, now obsessed with destroying the planet killer. Maybe it's the tension as they try to figure out a way to stop this thing before it kills anyone else. I don't know, but it's a fantastic episode, with smart writing, great acting, and a good, healthy dose of sci-fi action. I recommend watching this one in the remastered edition, since the new effects help create better battle sequences than what they could
Still
do in
looks
the
fuzzy.
1960s. The creators of the remastered Star Trek took great care not to make the shots outlive their welcome and only fit in the time allotted by the original episode. It's the same as the original, but with better effects. Number 9, The Forgotten from Star Trek Enterprise. There's a lot of backstory with this, but here's a summary. Earth was attacked at the end of Season 2 by a race called the Xindi, killing 7 million people, including Chief Engineer Tucker's younger sister. To try to stop the Xindi from completing a superweapon capable of destroying Earth completely, Enterprise has traveled into a vast expanse of space to find the Xindi. They do eventually, but Enterprise gets the crap kicked out of them by the Xindi, killing a good chunk of their crew. While Captain Archer tries to negotiate with a rogue Xindi faction hoping for peace, Tucker tries to write a letter to the parents of one of his dead officers. It's one of the few times in Star Trek where the death of a random crew member actually has an impact. Tucker keeps running into problems with writing the letter and finally confesses what the problem is.
I realize I'm not thinking about Taylor at all. I'm thinking about Elizabeth. I tried not to see her any differently
His sister.
than the other 7 million. But she's my sister, Paul. Sister.
One of the many reasons I disliked early Enterprise is because it seemed to lack genuine humanity, genuine compassion and empathy, preferring smugness and arrogance about a situation, or just bottomless stupidity. In the final 2 seasons, we finally get to see honest-to-God character development. And let's face it, it's nice to actually remind ourselves that the people who get killed by the monster of the week on a planet had names, had lives, and they shouldn't just get brushed aside. Sure, Deep Space Nine did that too as it explored the horrors of war in episodes like The Siege of AR-558, and that is indeed a great episode, but hey, this is my list, and I just like The Forgotten a little bit more. Number 8, Q-Who from The Next Generation. Like I said earlier, the first 2 seasons of The Next Generation were very hit or miss, with mostly misses. Q-Who, however, is a big hit and laid the foundation upon which a lot of future Star Trek stories will be told.
This one stands out to me.
Twice before on the show in episodes that are kinda goofy and had more than a little wincing as you watched some really bad moralizing from Picard. Here, however,
Perhaps what we most needed was a kick in our complacency to prepare us for what lies ahead.
Q, having supposedly been banished from his people, arrives on the Enterprise wanting to join the crew. Picard considers it, but ultimately decides that Q isn't trustworthy and claims that they're ready for anything out there and they don't need his help. In response, Q transports the ship thousands of light years away to a previously unexplored sector of the galaxy where they encounter, for the first time, the Borg, a race of cybernetic beings dedicated to assimilating other technology and cultures into their own. Despite the best efforts of the ship, it's soon clear just how utterly screwed they are.
You can't outrun them. You can't destroy them. If you damage them, the essence of what they are remains. They regenerate and keep coming. Eventually, you will weaken. Your reserves will be gone. They are relentless.
This episode is really damn quotable, particularly full of great dialogue from John Delancey. This encounter with the Borg will set up the threat they pose for future Star Trek stories, and, in my opinion, the second best Star Trek film with First Contact. And above all else, Q explains why it's so important to persevere with space exploration despite the dangers of it.
Its wonders, with treasures to satiate desires both subtle and gross. But it's not for the timid.
Number
Great
7,
line.
Yesterday's Enterprise from The Next Generation. I read once that the writers of Star Trek The Next Generation were big fans of time travel stories that weren't really time travel stories, and this is a perfect example of it. The Enterprise runs across a strange anomaly that they can't easily define or measure. From the anomaly emerges a ghost from the ship's past, the Enterprise C, the previous ship to bear the name. However, when the ship emerges, the entire setting changes. The lighting is darker. Starfleet officers are now more militaristic in their dialogue, and Worf has been replaced with the previously dead Kasha Yar. In this new reality, the Federation is in a losing war with the Klingons. It seems that the Enterprise C was supposed to be destroyed 20 years ago, defending a Klingon outpost from several Romulan ships. The exchange of fire caused the rift to open and sent the Enterprise C into the future. History never recorded their battle with the Romulans, nor the brave sacrifice of a Federation ship to defend the Klingons. The only one who realizes anything is wrong is Guinan, because her species always seemed to have some special abilities that were never elaborated on. Picard, trusting her judgment, must ask the crew of the Enterprise C to give up their lives and return to the battle with the Romulans, knowing they won't survive. This is truly one of the best episodes of the show, and in fact of Star Trek overall. Aside from giving Denise Crosby another chance at a better death for her character, the moral dilemma is genuine, and the plot itself the stuff of great science fiction.
Let's make sure history never forgets. The name. Enterprise.
Number 6, Duets from Deep Space Nine. The premise of Deep Space Nine is that a Federation commander is put in charge of a space station orbiting the planet Voyager. Voyager has petitioned for entrance into the Federation after they had just escaped 60 years of occupation by the Cardassians. They strip-mined the planet, enslaved the people, and were more than a little unpleasant about it. Basically, imagine the Holocaust, but going on for an entire generation and to the entire world. A Cardassian named Maritza arrives at the station, suffering from an illness that was only contracted because of a mining accident at what can best be thought of as a concentration camp. Maritza claims to have only been a file clerk at the camp, but the Bajorans want him extradited since anyone who was at the camp is considered a war criminal. However, is he truly an innocent? Or is he the guiltiest of all? Aside from just a fantastic performance and a collection of well-written scenes, Duet explores themes of regret, guilt, and hatred in various forms. Each new piece of the puzzle asks new questions, and the acting is superb, particularly from Maritza, played by Harris Yulin. Truly one of the greatest in the franchise.
You have no idea what it's like to be a cop. See these horrors. You do nothing. But it says Daddy deserves to be dead.
Number 5, Scorpion from Voyager. Voyager's premise, in case you didn't know, is that a Federation ship is forced to the other side of the galaxy, about 70 years from home. Needing to also integrate a group of renegades into their crew, they're supposed to encounter new races, new phenomena, and have more conflict on it due to its mixed crew. The actual result of the show was pretty bad. There was very little conflict between crew members, and when it did happen, it was often kind of stupid. The aliens they encountered would either be generic, terrible, or made less sense the more you learned about them. While Star Trek is often known for using science fiction to talk about issues and be cerebral about the possibilities of existence, Voyager was often preachy, uncaring, or just downright stupid about the issues, not helped by poorly written and inconsistent characterization. And now that I've bashed Voyager a whole lot, let's talk about one of their best damn episodes. As we've established on this list already, the Borg came from the other side of the galaxy too. That was their home space, and it's vast as all hell. At the end of Season 3, we'd seen the Borg only in a few Next Generation episodes and the movie First Contact. But here, Voyager is alone and about to cross into Borg space, with no hope for help or going around it. Except, their first entry into Borg space finds a whole bunch of destroyed Borg ships, and a species more powerful and malevolent than the Borg.
I feel malevolence, a cold hatred. The weak will perish. It's an invasion. They intend on destroying everything.
With the threat of this new race before them, Voyager has no choice forge an alliance with the Borg. It's tense, it's dramatic, the conflict is believable, and hey, it actually has that conflict that the show was supposed to be about. Add in John Rhys Davies in a minor role as a hologram Leonardo da Vinci, and you've got one of the most exciting and entertaining rides on Voyager. Part 2 also introduced the character that would save Voyager and actually do some interesting things with the show again, but that's neither here nor there. On its own, Scorpion is probably the best episode of Voyager in my humble opinion.
What if I made an appeal to the devil?
Number 4, In the Pale Moonlight from Deep Space Nine. By season 6 of DS9, the Federation was now in the midst of a brutal war with a power called the Dominion. Allied with the Klingons against the Dominion, the Federation is doing its best to fend them off, but they're losing. Badly. Every other power in the quadrant has either joined with the Dominion or signed a non-aggression pact with them, which includes the Romulans. In this episode, told in flashback from Captain Sisko's perspective, as he lays it all out in his log, he admits his part in attempting to create a deception to trick the Romulans into joining the war on their side. Now, bear in mind, all of Star Trek up until this point has been all about how humanity is above such underhanded tactics, how we're so morally good and we don't use cloaking technology because we don't sneak around and yada yada yada. Look, the point is that this story is a confession. This is a story of a good man who is admitting to his crimes, all the terrible things he has done, and all for the greater good.
Are dying out there. Every day. You know I mean. I had to keep my eye on the ball, winning the war, stopping the bloodshed. Those were the priorities.
It's dramatic as all hell, and as I said, with all the talk in the past about the moral superiority of the Federation in Star Trek, this shows what happens when things are pushed to their limits, and the kinds of things you may have to do when your back's to the wall and it's the only way to save everyone.
Carrick was right about one thing. A guilty conscience is a small price to pay for the safety of the Alpha Quadrant.
Number 3, Waltz from Deep Space Nine.
There is such a thing as truly evil.
So, remember the occupation of Bajor that I mentioned earlier? Well, if the Cardassians were analogous to the Nazis, then meet the equivalent of Hitler, Gul Dukat. Dukat was one of the best villains ever developed for the show, and make no mistakes, he's a villain. He did turn into more of an ally in the show for a season or two, and he does have his nobler points, but he's still a villain for the series, regardless of how you see him as a person. While he's imprisoned by the Federation, Sisko pays him a visit before he has to go to a preliminary hearing for the trial. The ship they're on is attacked, and the two crash land on a barely hospitable planet, taking shelter in a cave. While they wait for rescue and Sisko is with a broken arm, they start talking with one another, and we see just how unhinged Dukat has become. Anytime he steps away from Sisko, he sees other characters from the show talking to him. There are several ways to look at it, but I like to think there are different aspects of his own personality. His right-hand man, Damar, is his ego, telling him he's great and that others should recognize his greatness. His then-ally, Weyoun, is his mind's justification for all the atrocities he's committed, saying that he's a lesser evil than the ones he works with. And then there's Kira. Kira, to me, is his conscience, his true self. Strip away his delusions of grandeur, and she sees him for who he truly is.
You were a soldier and you had to carry out your orders. He doesn't believe that lame excuse any more than I do.
This is growing tiresome.
The episode is basically a two-man play. Two soldiers from opposing sides and one desperate for acknowledgement and recognition from the other, trying to defend every horrible thing he ever did as if he was fair and just. If I could, I would love to have this be performed on stage. It's that damn good.
It always comes back to that, doesn't it? All my crimes, I'm such a monster, such an evil man.
The best part is where Dukat starts breaking down as Sisko goads him on. His weak excuses for what he did during the occupation fall apart. His continued statements about how he wanted to help the Bajorans and was kind and fair to them disintegrate before he finally acknowledges the truth.
And you hated them for it.
Of course I hated them. I hated everything about them.
You should have killed them all.
Yes. Yes. I should have killed them all.
And that is why you're not an evil man.
Number 2, The Defector from the Next Generation. Continuing on our theme of war and the things people will do in relation to it, we have the Defector. A Romulan scout ship crosses the neutral zone, pursued by a warship and calling for help. The Enterprise rescues him, and he explains that the Romulans are arming for war, with a secret base and a plan to launch a massive assault of the Federation. His injuries are real, and the story is plausible enough, but there are holes in it. For example, the Romulan ship pursuing him seemed to slow down instead of overtaking him. He destroys his ship to prevent the Federation from accessing his secrets. He claims he's a low-ranking officer who just wants peace in his time, but the truth is soon revealed. He's actually an infamous Romulan admiral responsible for atrocities himself. However, he is genuine about stopping a war. His daughter was recently born, and he had a revelation about life, death, and what war would mean for his daughter and the environment it would create. After continual protests to the Romulan government over them seeming to be arming for war, he realized his only choice was to defect.
She will grow up believing that her father is a traitor. But she will grow up.
But are they actually arming for war? Why did they let him escape? This episode contains twists and turns all over the place, with great tension, music, dramatic parallels, acting, and just all around a great episode of television, and definitely one of the best episodes of Star Trek.
Now, if these men do not die well, it'll be a black matter for the king. We led them to it.
And my number one favorite episode of Star Trek across all series is
We have engaged the Borg.
The Best of Both Worlds from the Next Generation. Yeah, I think most people saw this coming, especially since this episode is considered by many to be the best episode of Star Trek in its entirety. I'm inclined to agree, though part 2 is of course not as good as the first one. This is the episode that established the Borg in all their glory and all their mythos. The tension, their unstoppability, assimilation, resistance is futile, etc., etc. The end of Q-Who had established that the Borg were coming, and the end of Season 3 showed them finally approaching. A single ship, and it wants Captain Picard.
To facilitate our introduction into your societies, it has been decided that a human voice will speak for us in all communications. You have been chosen to be that voice.
The Borg kidnap Picard, assimilate him, and use his knowledge of the Federation to sweep through space on their way to Earth. It's just as Q had said, you can't outrun them, you can't destroy them, they are relentless. Add on top of that a well-written story about Riker not knowing if he's ready to sit in the chair and be captain himself, and it's just awesome. Hell, in the real world it was uncertain if Patrick Stewart was going to be coming back as Picard, so you've got the stuff of fan speculation up the wazoo. For good and for ill, it started the trend of Star Trek for season-ending cliffhangers and the need for more creativity in defeating the villain other than shoot them a lot. The uncertainty, the acting, the music, the fights, just everything is perfect in this. I know I've said that a lot in this list, but then again, that's Star Trek in a nutshell. For all the bad things they've had in the entirety of its run on television, Star Trek stands the test of time as being great science fiction and just having great stories. Whether it's a prequel series that lays the foundations, a ship exploring the uncharted possibilities of existence, or an almost serialized drama about people living on the frontier, Star Trek will remain with us as we take our own step towards the future.
This is just another page in history. Turn the page.
Pretty fun video, I think.
Yeah, very informational. There's a comprehensive look at a lot of the different episodes. I was probably most impressed in how they really divided up all of the favorites in that top list between the different shows.
Yeah, I think Lewis did a good job covering all the series. And the episodes that I've seen that I recognize, Q-Hugh, and that episode always stuck out to me after I saw it as a kid. And while some people may be a little mixed on the Q character, I've known one or two who have. I think Q is more than just an annoying character that shows up once in a while. He does, well, he's a jerk. He does have a point to make. And it was a good, chilling introduction to the Borg. And can't remember the name at this moment, but the episode where the Enterprise finds that black hole, I think it was.
Yeah.
And Worf and Riker are on another Enterprise, or their sister ship, I think it was. And every time they try to leave the bridge, they just wind up on the bridge again.
Yeah.
That was a good, scary episode. And yeah, Picard becoming assimilated as number
Yeah, I
one.
remember that. I think some of the, because Next Generation did a lot of multi-part episodes, and I think some of those multi-part episodes were as good as some, or better than some of the weaker Next Generation movies. Because, I mean, Next Generation obviously had one of the stronger casts. I think in terms of series, Next Generation is right up there with Deep Space Nine as probably the strongest series overall. So it doesn't surprise me that they had a lot of episodes from those two series.
Yeah, and I haven't watched the Waltz episode from Deep Space Nine, but it looks very fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of someone like having their conscience take the form of other people, and just have him like in his head try to work through how he's thinking, try to justify or come to terms with what he really is.
I guess I had forgotten just how strong of an actor I thought Captain Sisko was.
Avery Brooks.
Just a lot of good material from that series. There was a couple episodes there that weren't in the list, so that's fine. Obviously, that's his list. I know that the multi-part episode, Next Generation, that was around the Klingon Civil War, that was one of my personal favorites from that series. Of course, the Space Seed from the original series, that gave birth to the Khan character. Maybe that's more iconic than really good writing and effects.
The first one he showed where they're put in the Old West.
Yeah,
It does look like they were running on a budget, but it does have an interesting premise.
sure.
Like the original series was a lot cheesier than even its own movies.
It was
were gonna be.
experimental, I think.
Yeah, like they worked with what they had, and surprised all the episodes he put on from Enterprise, but
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing. There was a lot, for really not liking the show very much, he had a lot of episodes that came from that show in this list.
I need to quickly change the battery.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that. That hasn't happened in a long time. A little embarrassing, but anyway, you were saying?
Yeah, so I think for really not liking the series, I think there were a lot of episodes in his list that came from the show. Not as many from Voyager. I think there was only the one from Voyager.
Yeah, I think there's only one or two. I was surprised how much he put from Enterprise, but I guess it meant to show he is fair.
Yeah, he gave a cross section.
Although I think the reason he probably didn't put as much from Voyager is, as he said, he didn't like the writing. I've only seen a couple of episodes, so I can't be a fair judge. But I do know that Lewis has said, like, his favorite show is Deep Space Nine. I think Picard is his favorite captain. Could be wrong there. I know that Janeway is his least favorite captain. Mostly he thinks that she made bad decisions, so not surprised he didn't showcase Voyager as much. But yeah, it was an interesting list. He showcased a lot of different aspects, and it was just a fun list. It was interesting to hear him describe each episode. I mean, if you've seen them, it's enjoyable, but if you haven't seen them, it makes you, I feel, want to see them.
Yeah. I think another thing that surprised me was a lot of people will talk about just how stiff the acting was with, Shatner in particular, and in some of those original series episodes. He gave credit to a lot of the writing pieces and a lot of the creativity, because again, they were doing something brand new in that series. So that was something else that was kind of surprising to me.
Writing always plays a big part. A lot of people sometimes either don't give enough credit or they try to downplay the writing, either give credit to the actors or the director. But without a good script, the overall product can't work. I mean, a good example of good writing is The Sopranos or Deadwood. And say what you will about some of the cheesier aspects, but Gene Roddenberry did break new ground.
Absolutely.
And he had a vision of the future that may be a bit too optimistic, but tried to do the best he could. And so, I don't know if it really ties into this, but there's something to note about the latter Star Trek shows. Do you know who Rick Berman is?
He's the Next Generation creator, correct?
No.
Director.
He, when Gene Roddenberry became too sick and was starting to die, Rick Berman became the showrunner for Next Generation.
Mm-hmm.
He also he was the showrunner for Deep Space Nine, and he played a huge creative role in Voyager and co-created Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
Many people behind the camera are very mixed on him because they put it, like, I'm not going to go into everything, but one of the big things was Berman apparently didn't want episodes of Star Trek to carry too big arcs that would span episodes. He usually would prefer episodes have something that could be wrapped up within just the one episode.
Yeah.
Because he felt that way anybody could just jump in and watch it. But for the writers, they found that stressful because it didn't give them a lot of room to develop characters and stuff. There's a lot of, like, some of the Deep Space Nine definitely started taking on storylines more in its latter seasons with the Dominion War.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that can be a struggle, and some people are mixed on Berman. Some people think that he held Star Trek back, but others feel like Roddenberry was the showrunner for Next Generation first few seasons, and people noticed the show didn't really pick up and become successful until Berman took over. So
I think part of that may have been coincidental. Also, as that cast kind of gelled and there were different pieces added, I think that also helped that series immensely.
Yeah.
I mean, it took a while for them to get on their feet.
Yeah. And can't think of a ton more to say other than I think this was a very well put together list. It was fair, and even though he didn't like Enterprise, Voyager, he still acknowledged when they got something right.
Mm-hmm.
And Star Trek, it's a lot, some people look at it and just think sci-fi, but it's clear there's a lot more deeper stories when you really go by it episode by episode. They do have good actors, Patrick Stewart, Avery Brooks, while he hasn't acted in a long time, he was good as Cisco.
Mm-hmm.
And well, it can be a bit hit or miss. Voyager had its moments.
That's something I still have yet to watch either of the two more recent series. Who knows?
Well, we'll see. Star Trek's been a long time, and like Scooby-Doo, doesn't look like it's going anywhere. Thank you for watching, and if you want to see another top 15 video by Linkara reaction, go back and check out our reaction to his top 15 1980s Twilight Zone episodes list.